Welcome to My Heroes number 12. Today it's about artists, photographers who use geometric objects to make abstract images. I first became aware of Barbara Kasten in the late 1980s, 10 years after I started my Deep Space series. A friend asked me if I knew Kasten's work. Well, I was blown away. The breadth of her work was amazing. Let's look at a few of her photographs. The first one is just with a grid and then some circular shapes and a triangle. That was a very simple one. After seeing her work, I took a break from still lifes as I didn't want to be influenced by what I had seen. I was impressed. Barbara is now almost 90 and still doing great work. Let's run through a few of the images that I have. So the next one is multicolored. It's the image is square. It's split into parts, but it's all triangles and squares or parts of squares. Then there's another image, just beautiful. It has zigzags, half circles, triangles, very much like some of the things that I found when I was doing the work. And then we have some three-dimensional spheres and cones, some three-dimensional triangles, which are cones, and squares and rectangles, and a very wonderful palette. And the palette there is really muted. It's light colors and quite a nice composition. Then my fifth image of hers is a bit more complex, and it's other shapes too. In fact, there's a 3D hexagon there and a number of other pyramids and triangles and spheres. And the last image I have of Barbara's is just amazing. It's so eye-catching, and it's so full of color and curvilinear lines and straight lines and triangles. And I just think it's beautiful. I wish I owned a print of this. I think they're very expensive. Here's another woman, a photographer who I admire, Jessica Eaton. Jessica Eaton came up on my radar in 2018 after I had begun photographing still lifes. That was in 2014. I was using circles, squares, and triangles. She's using circles and squares. Her dedication to preparation and record keeping and her knowledge of color really impressed me. Eaton's square images, Cubes for Albers series, is a beautiful tour de force. I remember studying Joseph Albers and also Johannes Eaton in color classes when I was in college. But let me show you some of her work, both some older ones and some newer ones. So first there are her cubes that are multicolors, and her cubes, which are, this pair of images is pretty nice. It's a cube that's been broken down, and it's a cube in a cube. I love this image. Then we have a transitional image that's just dealing, and it's called a transition, and it's just dealing with circles and straight lines. Both lines and circles are some of my favorite things to work with. Then we have a series that she's most famous for, and it's the Ode to Joseph Albers. And it's a rectangle within a rectangle, and it's a square in a square in a square in a rectangle, and the colors change. And she's done hundreds of these with different color variations. They're just beautiful, and she really understands colors. They have a lot of depth, even though they're kind of flat. She takes copious amounts of notes as to what the colors are and the percentages are, and how the colors react with each other. I'm sure that Joseph Albers would love her work. And in fact, that she's doing it with photographs is just amazing, and that she has that much control. So she's a recent hero of mine. Hooray for Jessica Eaton. My third hero for today is Moholy-Nagy. Moholy-Nagy was a hero of mine from the start of my art education. I discovered him in the late 50s while in architecture school, and he has been with me ever since. Moholy-Nagy was a Hungarian immigrant, constructivist, painter, graphic designer, photographer, filmmaker, and a professor at the Bauhaus. First image I'm looking at today is really made with straight lines and curvilinear shapes, sort of a half a circle and a circle that you can barely see in black. It's just the division of space is just beautiful. Beautiful. I can't let go of this image. It's a good one. And I have a similar image, which isn't as dark. It's on the light side. It has predominantly a yellow circle and a black and gray square intersected by an intersection of a red line. And the red line and the center of the circle are making a triangle. It's a little shout out to some not only geometric formula, but also mathematical formula. A little more of Nagy, and these were early images of his. And he was also an amazing typographer, but he was in the 50s. Moholy-Nagy was a Hungarian immigrant. In 1933, he left Germany because he was considered to be a foreigner and they didn't want him working there and he wasn't welcome. So he had to leave and go to Paris. So he worked in Paris for a while. In 1937, he had immigrated to the States. He became the director of the new Bauhaus School in Chicago. Later, that program became part of the Illinois Institute of Technology. And in 1946, he became an American citizen. Unfortunately, he died the same year. He had cancer. And although he was able to become a citizen, he wasn't able to live much longer. I'm just scratching the surface with Moholy-Nagy, and I'd like to show you more of his. Because he was a graphic designer, he did this wonderful book that it has Russian characters in it, but it's a typographic book with symbols. And it's a good image. And because I studied typography in Switzerland, I'm fond of this particular image. Then there's posters. He made a series of posters using type and image. And I would say that these are part of his graphic design years. And this is an ad for a tire company. Probably a very famous work of his from Bauhaus time, where he has some pictures of athletes and using photographic images and constructive shapes. The next image is probably a pretty famous one. It's a poster for a photo, quality photo. It has camera. It has multiple exposures in the background and linear structures and typography. Really a wonderful typographic image and an advertisement. Then there's just pure photography where he was just experimenting with photography. And here it's a circle with dots and lines. And the next one is just a photographic image using light. I look at these images often because I like to keep Laszlo on my radar. He helps me a lot. Here's a terrific picture that's only of mechanical shapes of circles, squares, dots and lines. Doesn't look like my work, but I'm impressed by it and I'm influenced by it. Now I'd like to show you some of the work I'm working on lately of still lifes. My still lifes aren't really like the other three heroes that I've been talking about today, but they use the same elements. The first one I did, which was 10 years ago when I was in Rotterdam, where I had a residency, I just picked, and they gave me a studio. I just picked up things from the yard that was outside the studio, and here they're throw away a can and a gray piece of plywood that had been painted gray and some bottle caps and an old tire and some string and some rebar to create this piece. It was after I saw a show by Rietveld, very much influenced by him. Then when I got back to Santa Monica in my studio, I started working with circles, squares, and triangles. And just finding things. In this case, it's a grid and a piece of tablecloth, a kid's toy, a blow-up ball, and a yardstick, circles, squares, and triangles. And it's called Float. Then I want to take a step back to where I first started with this, and that's called Deep Space. That was done in the 70s, and it just happens to have some circles and squares in it. And they were all shot with a 4x5 camera and multiple light sources. So not easy to do, but very complex. Really love these images. Another deep space image would be this one, which is a little darker in tone, but and I'm using fabric again. The colors are produced by filters on lights, not painted objects. Then we're going to fast forward again to what I'm doing now. This one is in black and white, but this is called Out of the Box. And it's of circles and squares and triangles, and they look like they're floating. They were either hanging from strings or attached to the side of the box. But because I couldn't control the color of these objects, it made a better picture in black and white. Out of the box. And here's another one called Balance. It's using a bowling ball, which I often use. It looks like the world. And to balance that out is a cinder block, and it's on a triangle. So I've made the triangle to support this plank of plywood. And it's just, you have to have balance in everything you do. Otherwise, you would fall off the edge of the earth if you think it's square and not round. And then my last image for today is this one, which is called Spiral Square 3 and the blue. So the blue is for that wiffle ball, which I painted blue. And this was made from just bottle caps and papers that I cut out, and another also measuring stick to make zigzags. And I have to say now that I have probably between 40 and 50 of these circle, squares, and triangles. You can find them on my website. You can find them in smallbooks.com. There's a little book that has, I think, 10 or 12 in them. And I'm hoping to show them soon, both small and large. So there's a little journey for today, and to show you how I've been influenced by other photographers who work in the studio and make still lifes. I don't use apples and oranges and pears and dead birds and things. I'm using just geometric shapes that I find lying around or find on the street. I'm loving it. Hope you like it too. See you again next week. Bye.